Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's live stream with Fusion. We are joined by a number of distinguished guests, and I will shortly be handing over to David, who is our host. But before I do that, I want to make everybody aware that we have, as always, a competition for you, and there's an opportunity for viewers of the stream to win $50. Please just go to AVAX Fusion, our X account, and check out our pinned post. Like and retweet, follow the instructions. Winners will be announced today on this live stream, so please stay tuned. And any winners announced, please, you have 48 hours to claim your prize. And like I say, we'll be coming back on later to announce who is our winner. So without further ado, I'll hand over to our host, David from Fusion.
What up, everybody? Thanks for joining this crew here. I wanted to wish G a happy birthday for our baby Fusion, which I think this is kind of a birthday celebration as well. I think it was like we determined this is around Fusion's birthday, right? G and I are a couple of the parents of Fusion here.
Yeah, I think it was the 9th. So birthday week, we can count that.
Close enough. Birthday week. I should have brought the birthday hat. I forgot about that, but. 1 year birthday for Fusion. So we thought that it would be cool to bring back everybody who had been on. I think we got like 50% of the folks. So Fusion was born, I guess, a year and change ago. So we're 1 year old at this point. We announced it at the Avalanche Summit in May. So that was, I feel like my face is being blocked out by this thing. We announced it in May, so that was, let's call it, 7 months ago. And we've been kind of working on this ever since. And for folks who do not remember what Fusion is, or this is your first time around, Fusion is a new blockchain ecosystem built on Avalanche. It's backed by a $100 million commitment. It's been a great year. I think we've got around I think we're kind of like bigger numerically if you talk about projects involved than lots of other blockchains out there. So, a couple hundred projects across all of the composers that we work with. And I think that it's been interesting over the last year that we have set out to build a blockchain economy, basically structured around real world outcomes. And that is kind of where everything has gone. It's not, speculation is not really interesting to people. Bullshit, hypey stuff is not really interesting. I think it's for better that the industry has moved towards more fundamentals. And I think that, I think we're kind of like very much on thesis here. So there's companies, and a lot of the folks are on here, like Life AI, W3, and Yijing Zhan from Kite, who are building kind of real projects using a blockchain backend to do better drug discovery, or to deliver integrated financial services, or to provide agentic workflows. So, if we think about what a blockchain ecosystem, what it looks like, what it's looked like previously, I think the new blockchain ecosystems on their ways are going to have to look differently. Pretty interesting. I know some folks saw Polygon's acquisitions in the payments space yesterday that were announced yesterday, but I think that the old model, basically like sell block space, hope for scarcity, maybe token goes up, that, there might be that dynamics at play, but it's going to have to be around real world workflows. So I think that this year is going to be, very interesting. I think that it's just going to continue to provide tailwinds for the type of approach that Fusion has taken. So I think it's going to be a super fun year. So with that, we'll do some intros, and I'll go around the horn here. Just say your name, what you're working on, and one prediction that when we're back here celebrating Fusion's 2nd birthday, what will we be talking about? Just the top thing we'll be wanting to talk about next year when we celebrate birthday number 2. And next year, G, we're going to have to do birthday hats. So just
yeah, we'll remember.
make a note of that. All right, so I'll just go from my view here. So Chris, why don't you go first?
Thanks, David. Hey, everyone. Yeah, my name is Chris. Work for BD at Ava Labs and primarily working on AI and DeepIn. I think, what you kind of said, agents are going to be more, embedded into our systems. And I think we're going to see that clearly. Instead of one model kind of doing all the work, we're going to see agents working together and blockchain kind of enabling everyone to benefit from that. So I think a year from now, we're going to see a very complex system where you kind of, benefit from the system, whereas rather the system benefits from you. So.
Cool. All right, Boff, your turn.
Hey guys, Charlie, or you may know me as Boff, head of BD for the arena. Great to be here. Thank you guys for putting this together. To sort of echo a bit on sort of predictions where we'll be in a year's time, I sort of think similar to kind of what Chris said, like sort of agents working for us, but I still think that there'll be a high level of personalization for each user to be able to sort of customize what works for them and sort of really push that narrative for the like perfect personal assistant using different agents and sort of encompassing them into one. And that can kind of go across, can almost include anything, like from social to finance to everything really. And just really polish that personalized sort of experience and model.
Cool. All right, Tuan.
All right, so
I think there's going to be some consistency in terms of the answer. So Tuan's probably going to say, yeah, you go next one.
Okay. Yeah. So hi, my name is Tuan. I'm the CEO of Life AI. So basically, we are the L1 chain on Avalanche in healthcare, and we solve a very simple problem. Is like the current existing healthcare system is totally broken, especially in the US. Because like everything moves very slow, regulation, compliance is basically a lot of great ideas, great innovation happen in the US, but the mass adoption and the speed is just basically like somewhere else. So a lot of like US company are now looking to basically work with like outside of, for example, like Chinese company and so on. And the thing moved really fast in the US these days about there's some conflict between the nation and so on. And so sometimes the blockchain technology have to do a lot of like cross-border thing. Okay, so Life AI is just basically in a very unique position to leverage the blockchain technology and AI to have to basically like make healthcare much better, to bring back the original meaning of healthcare that is actually have to serve for life rather than like profiting from sickness. So here we are for Life AI. I've been working on this for like 8 years and very happy to be part of the AVAC Fusion group. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Juan. All right, G.
Hi, I'm Giancarlo Roma. I'm also BD at Ava Labs. I sort of wear many hats, but I think the title that we've come up with, David, is strategy architect. So I'll go by that.
Strategy big baller.
Yeah, exactly. Prediction for a year from now, I think blockchain for a long time has been a solution looking for a problem or multiple problems. And I think a year from now you'll start to see problems be solved, whether it's embedded finance or blockchain as a coordination layer, and a lot of that ties into Fusion. But I think there'll be real business outcomes and positive outcomes for users and for retail and all sorts of spaces that you'll start to actually notice, or you'll notice positive outcomes, and then you'll find out it was actually blockchain enabling it. So again, that's what a lot of what we're trying to do with Fusion anyway. So I think in a year you'll start to see that more.
All righty, Jing, thank you for staying up late. I appreciate you joining. Intro and what are you excited about for when we come back here and celebrate Fusion's second birthday in 2026?
Thank you so much, David, for hosting this Speaker Friday. Very excited. I think what we want to see in 1 year is that AI getting smarter and smarter, and they will do real work for human beings. So there's more agent-to-agent transaction will be dominated for a lot of the.
Against the background noise, I think.
Can you hear me now?
I can't. It's a little bit soft though. Like the other, there's issues with the audio. Okay, yeah, go. It's better.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yeah, that's good. That's better. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm James. So thank you so much for this.
I think I got a lot of background noise. I'm sorry. Other people hearing that as well? Yeah. So I think there's background noise. I think something's like coming to your microphone. So what about a porter? Is that, do you want to try again?
Yeah. Is that better? Maybe it's
That's better. Yeah. Great. That's better. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, because we are building agentic payment infrastructure, what we will be very excited to see in 1 year is because agents getting smarter and smarter, so a lot of the agent-to-agent transaction will be needed for a lot of the daily use cases. And because of that, agentic payments will be dominant and needed a very robust scalable infrastructure that will run very fast agent-to-agent transaction workload on top of that.
Cool. Yeah, I think agents are definitely a recurring theme here. All right, Porter, over to you.
Hey everyone, Porter Stoll, CEO of W3.io. What we do is something we think is pretty revolutionary, which is we work backwards from the customer, which is something I think I actually have in common with my fellow panelists here today. So when I think about the industry and what we should expect over the next year, I think it's going to be about solving real world problems with this technology. It is the utility that all this great technology can provide. So when I think about what we're going to see over the next year, I think you're going to see global finance start to transition on the crypto rails. You're seeing that in stable coins, and you're going to begin to see some of the drumbeat actually materialize into real solutions. We had Jamie Dimon come out a couple of weeks ago and just say that he sees this as inevitable. I think we've all felt that way over a long time, but when you see what's achievable in just the next year, I think you're going to look back and say, wow, there was a lot of progress to really transitioning the financial system onto modern day infrastructure, which is what crypto is all about. So I'm excited for that future, and we'll be participating actively in that transition.
Well, let me ask you, Porter. So Porter's like, not just kind of almost a year into the CEO job. Not exactly. It's kind of like 11 months in or something like that. Like what are you like? Are you surprised what you're working on now versus what you thought you'd be working on? Or like, how does the stuff that W3 is focused on correspond to what you thought you might be focused on when you started?
I think it's changed dramatically. And there was a couple things that happened in Q1 last year that I think were transformative. One, Trump coin happened. And I think that just pushed the entire industry too far to one extreme. And because of that, it started to swing back the other way for utility, customers, revenue. And that really spoke to me. And like, as I saw that happen, I began to hear more of that drumbeat on the financial system really looking into this technology and how it could be adopted. Saw a lot more confidence and buy-in on that this transition to modern day rails was inevitable. So look, you have the financial system coming onto your technology. This is a once in a career opportunity where I feel like we're in the right place at the right time. And, we're not going to stop trying to capitalize on it. And I think we've, with just doing some basic things, we've been able to generate a great pipeline. And that's a sign you're at the right place at the right time.
All right, Brian, over to you.
Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Brian, I'm the Director of Ecosystem Relations here at Ava Labs. Basically, I help play matchmaker between founders in our ecosystem and capital partners who are deploying capital across liquid venture DeFi opportunities. I think, the one thing I've been having a lot of conversations with venture folks about that I think is relevant to share is like, given, you know, a lot of these new AI business building tools, web app development tools, I think you're going to have like a pretty interesting compression at like the pre-seed and seed stage, you know, kind of venture focus. I think your Series A companies are, you know, looking a lot more like seed companies to a certain degree, where, you know, there's much higher, or I would say like lower or medium thresholds to like get a seed round done. And then Series A, I think it has moved up where, you know, people are requiring a lot more revenue. I think also from an investment perspective, and even just like, you know, an entrepreneur perspective, you could be able to kind of like drum up a 0 to 1 version of your business to prove market demand super quickly, right? Like the tools that are now available, you know, that I think we're seeing out there make it so that like when you're coming to investment pitches, instead of saying, hey, I have this idea, let me, you know, raise 500K to $1 million to go build it out, you can build like a 0.5 version of it and show people, hey, there's actually demand for this idea. I have, you know, 50, 100 people who've converted and landed on this wait list of a, you know, idea or a product that like it functionally doesn't work, but like, here's the demand and I can show you, Mr. Investor, people want this. So like fund me so I can go build, you know, the real operating version of this. So I think you're going to see a lot more of, you know, a lot more ideas kind of come to market that I think previously would have taken a lot longer, obviously, to kind of like go out and build, which is really, really cool. The hard part is going to be trying to see, okay, out of all these, you know, which are the ones that when we go to that 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 step make the most sense, like for the ecosystem, right? So because it's now very easy to build a lot of stuff, I think you're going to have like an influx of, you know, net new ideas and opportunities. And I'm frankly really excited about that. Like even me myself, like I'm tinkering around with just like building internal tools and things like that, which are like, you know, I'm a by nature, I call myself a lazy person, but what that means is just like I like to automate and use tools. So like everything that's like low code, no code, that's available now, like most people, if you are tech savvy enough and you're on this call and listening, you can probably figure out how to use most of these tools and like go pretty far with them, which is really cool. So yeah, I think, you know, there's going to be an influx of like net new ideas, which I'm excited about, that, you know, hopefully can benefit our ecosystem.
All right, cool. And last but certainly not least, my main man, Scott Dykstra.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me on. Exciting to be here. I can't believe a year has passed. I mean, it's like crypto's basically dog years. Like you know, a month goes by and a year goes by, and vice versa. But great to be here. Scott Dykstra, co-founder and CTO of Space and Time. We support Avalanche and Fusion by providing ZK proven data, allowing smart contracts and allowing apps to query data that's accurate, proven, and we've invented some new technology around that and brought it to the crypto ecosystem. From Space and Time's perspective, a year from now, I think we'll be back into a full euphoric swing of kind of high liquidity markets. Right now, there's a much lower liquidity market than we're used to, and I think as over the next year, a lot's going to happen in favor of crypto. From it's been said multiple times on this call already, from banks adopting stable coins and building their own securities markets on chain, to you know, a lot of maturity around the apps, the online payments, and the data provided across these systems. Crypto just becomes a better way to pay on the internet for services. It becomes integrated into your wallet, your traditional wallet, your Apple Wallet, your Stripe account, and the way that we, you know, use credit cards online to pay will become a lot more crypto focused over the next year. And then that'll bring back a new wave of excitement. I'll call it euphoria. And I think a lot of activity a year from now. This is probably the best time to be building in crypto ever. Not only because it's accelerated by AI tools and AI agents that can connect to the chain and help you write code, but also because there's not as much builders building right now, and which gives you an edge. So great time to be building, and a year from now is going to be really fun.
Cool. Thanks for the intros and the projections about what's going to happen. So I think that the first segment that I'd like to start talking with people here about is like how to build real businesses on token account, like on the basis of token economies, and what the implications are. I think we've talked about this a couple times in different contexts throughout the spaces we've had. But what I think is interesting about like tokens is it's kind of like dynamic equity. So like equity is equity, right? If you have equity in a company, like you have shareholders, you know, people are betting on the value of the company to increase, but it's not an instrument you can actively use to kind of like build a business around. So I think that everyone's been talking about, you know, for all these years, oh, tokens are an amazing way of getting ecosystem network effects. I mean, by and large, I don't think been the case. I mean, it's provided people with a mechanism for shared economic value, but it's not like, you know, a lot of tokens out there don't actually create network effects because they're not designed with the structural characteristics of the business in mind, right? Or they're not allocated properly to generate the type of transaction volume that gets to network effects. So I think that there's lots of like, if real businesses are being built on chain, I think that, you know, some people have looked at the token market and said, wow, this thing's just done. Like, don't do this. Tokens don't work. And I don't think that's actually the case. I just don't think tokens have worked in the absence of businesses to plug them into that make sense. And also people sitting behind company balance sheets know how to allocate that capital to actually get, you know, grow the business, grow network effects, et cetera. So there's this inherent tension, I think, not tension, but there's like, to what extent the model needs to change, obviously, for running a token economy and integrating into a business. That's for sure. But I think it'd be interesting to explore, like, how does that need to change, and what are the ways that building a blockchain ecosystem, because that's what all of the projects within Fusion are. They're kind of like, you know, if you remember, they're vertical ecosystems. People can plug into agentic workflows through APIs and SDKs, or integrated compute or integrated financial offerings for W3, or for drug discovery through Life AI. So it's just interesting. I think new businesses are going to be built with tokens integrated in new ways, but there's kind of like, I wouldn't say attention, but there's room for exploration in terms of how this would work. So Yijing, I want to start with you on this one. You've kind of, Kite AI launched their token in November, very successful launch. There's lots of also really strong enterprise partners and kind of like real adoption going on. Like, how has your management team and leadership team thought about kind of like, on one hand, building you know, a real business to power all of agentic payments, and on the other, kind of like working with the community in a token-based ecosystem and having that be a force multiplier? How is your team kind of like thinking about that? And, you know, yeah, just what are the thoughts? What's your frame for how you manage these things? Because they're complementary, but they have to be managed in a way that generates synergies.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that there's no established playbook yet, because what Kite is building here is also very new. At the one side, we want to build our AI infrastructure, which can be used for agent-to-agent transaction. This is like an agentic payment based infrastructure foundation that every agent, when they do the transaction, they can use. So this is more like a technical product-driven business that to a lot of time both enterprise and end user will use. But the other side, because we launched the token, so we also need to take care of our community, our ecosystem, etc. So for us, there's two parts of things we're thinking right now. One is on the governance side. So it will be a little bit more like a classic book. All the technical products go-to-market will be built by the website. And then our token ecosystem, I think that part will managed by the foundation. And a lot of times, this is like a flywheel. We use tokens to do a lot of incentives to not only the community ecosystem on the Web3 side, but also we will build this, enterprise partners with traditional like tech and AI company on the Web2 side. And the token will be another way we can use as incentives that we can help to grow the Web2 business. So that's one side. On the governance side, you have two parts, but we will build the circles that in order to enable the flywheel on both lab and the foundation side. Another thing is I think something very interesting we're thinking about, as you said, David, your token is similar like your equity, or it's actually more have the liquidity. It's more like a public stock, for example. It's although it's not security, but it has some where you can do the comparison. So think about as a public tech AI company, how they use their stock to boost their business. This is what we can use for token side.
I'm getting some big background noise. I don't know if someone's like sweeping or doing something in the background. Getting a lot of background noise on.
Oh really? Sorry, no. There's actually quite.
Okay, I must be the audio. Keep going. I just was hearing a lot of.
Yeah. So because I think one thing we're also thinking creative beyond the existing playbook is think about all the tech AI public company, how they leverage all the resources from their public stock market. I think one thing is they have enough capital so they can help their ecosystem business to grow. And another thing is through like M&A that all the startups around them they can build more innovations at the beginning, outside of the company, but eventually they can bring more innovation to the company through M&A. So that's another way we're thinking about how we should leverage all the digital assets, that's already on the market to help the overall kite AI ecosystem to go. It can be beyond the traditional grants. It can be beyond the traditional incentives to the community. It can be more capital related kind of the operation that will help us to find more builders, innovation startups and innovative and also help us to create the good and innovative ideas on the AI side. So this part is more like an experiment, but I think we want to try and explore a little bit more on that side.
Cool. So Boff, like one thing I wanted to ask you is like, I think that the role of community has like shifted quite a bit this past year, and like also like as more projects are run more like businesses as opposed to kind of like with business as a product and not just token as a product. Like I won't think it'll look exactly the same as like what's going on in Web 2, but it won't look what's going on in Web 3 historically either. So like, how does the community aspect of it shift, or how do you expect it will shift?
I think right now there is actually all the fundamentals. Fundamentals. Yeah, the fundamentals criteria, so all the governing is converged both from the Web 2 side and the Web 3 side. So I think even I was an investor in a tech company at a Web 2 company, so I do a lot of corporate venture in the past. So what we're looking for is if you're looking for a business, startup, you're looking for what is the business model, how big is the TAM, how good is the profitability of our company. I think in the Web 3 now it's also that side. Even you look at the ecosystem.
A lot of background still. I'm gonna sorry for interrupting, but it sounds like there's like banging in there. So let me move over to Boff real quickly, Jing. I'm just getting a lot of background noise. So how do you think community changes in this world?
Yeah, to be honest, it's been changing a lot. It's changed even a lot since we launched our token, which has been almost coming up to 2 years now, and sorry, was I muted? Where did I cut out?
No, you said you did just 2 seconds ago.
Oh, okay, cool. And what was sort of unique at sort of the time where we sort of did our TGE and sort of token airdrop was that sort of our users were accruing points over time. So it wasn't like when you sort of mention about tokens being equity, people were investing their time as well as financial stuff on top of that. It was sort of like a fusion of the both. But having that sort of extend over 12 months, a sort of airdrop that sort of occurred, we wrapped that up around November last year. And I think we're in a really unique place now. And I think what's important when you talk about the fusion of tokens and community and sort of sprinkling sort of like economics into that, I think a lot of it comes down to the product and sort of how the product can sort of push that onwards and benefit the token, if that makes sense. And that's something that I know over the last few months, and especially the last quarter, we're working on some really exciting features that will really sort of benefit that now that the airdrop is kind of behind us, to sort of really scale up the product that will sort of support the token and in due time sort of lift everything simultaneously. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if it didn't in parts.
It makes sense. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Tuan, I know that you have you've done a lot of work on this with your community. So yeah, how have you thought about kind of like merging your very scientific focused business with kind of like grassroots community involvement? I think you've done a lot. You've looked at both of these things, and I think in a great degree of depth.
Okay, so it's a very interesting question. So basically for us, it's always about business as a product. So whenever we go and talk with like not only the community, but our enterprise partner, right? So a lot of times they always ask, okay, what is the use of the token and so on? And to be very frank, that we sometimes have a very hard time to explain, like, for example, to Microsoft or Google about like why we need the token. Yeah, but like more and more people realize that, okay, so basically like we can use tokens as a bonding to bring the community together. So basically like more and more, like for example, like 3-4 years ago, it make it really hard to go and talk with like a big corporate like Google or Microsoft about like partnering with us. But these days actually is much, I think maybe because of Bitcoin or something, people will be much more open to basically like understanding and more open-minded to Web3 company. And so let's say that for community, they love to have a token. For enterprises, like sometimes they are very cautious about like working with a Web3 company. So let's say that we always have to find something, a good narrative to go and talk with them. But at the end of the day, people always look into it and realize that if the core value of your company is business as a product, then people will follow. That as simple as that.
Yeah. Just for folks on the thread here. So when we talk about business as a product, this is what you think about as a traditional business that someone's running. So agentic payments or a social app like the Arena or drug discovery like Tuan's doing. Token as a product is not the same as business as a product. Token as a product is the exchanges that you're on, the narrative that you tell, the community that you've built. So there, historically, most crypto companies have been in the business of token as a product. Because token as a product, you could do quite well financially. Now that's changing, right? If new tokens are not performing nearly as well as ones that launched historically. So now projects that have to be successful, they have to do business as a product well, and they have to do token as a product well. And those are, as we talked about, those are kind of like synergistic systems that if you correctly construct them, you should get a 1 + 1 = 3. But historically, people have really focused on the token as a product. There hasn't been that much focus on business as a product. And if you think about it from economic rationality, if I could just focus on token as a product and make lots of money, there's a certain set of people out there who that might sound very attractive to. And I can't say that it does sound unattractive to me. I think people, making money is a good thing, but that's not like sustainable over time, because you need fundamentals. I think you will going forward, especially. There might be some vintage stuff where you don't, just because it's been trading for a while. But generally speaking, I think the bar for new valuable tokens has gone up, because you have to be able to meld together business as a product and token as a product. So Porter, same kind of question. Like, how do you how is community different? How do you think about integrating it in the context of like building a real business? Like, how do you How do you view this?
As I listen to all the panelists and we talk about the 1-year anniversary of Fusion here, this is not a coincidence. That's the one thing the audience has to understand. Fusion in this group is assembled because I think this group all has demonstrated already that there has to be this balance between business as a product, token as a product, real world value. So like we're all here 1 year later talking about this because we saw this and started building towards it a year ago. And like that's what is really exciting here when I'm with people who share a similar vision and philosophy. I'm right there with Tuan. Like when I think about community and the community we're building at W3, it's all about solving real world problems for real customers who pay real money. And these are the stories I tell to build out my community, to build out my partnership base for the inevitable token that I'm looking to launch. So they do go hand in hand, they do complement each other, but it is all your power, all your momentum is tied up in business as a product right now. And I think once I embrace that and really lean into it, my community conversations start going a lot better. And it makes a lot of sense to me. Everyone has been burned since 2021 in the token launches that have occurred during those vintages. And I get it. There was so much incentive to just make the old model work. But now here we are in 2026. I think everyone knows that like there needs to be a different way to do this. And I think, what I love about this group is I feel like we're all kindred spirits and we've all kind of viewed this to some degree in our own lens on what needs to happen. So like community is about, value creation, plain and simple. And if you can create value for each type of your community members, you are going to do well. And it's like, I think of it as like more of a fixed income model, like a dividend payment. As long as like there's that value accrual and it's going back to the token, I think these are, retail and institutional investors they don't believe the old model works. And so there has to be a new approach. And it starts with, business as a product, real world problems being solved with this tech. And then you just got to chip away and organically grow it from there.
I think that's a very good insight. So Chris, like as you're working with new projects or thinking about building on Avalanche, like what are you advising people, like how to think about just kind of like what building a business on chain actually means now versus what it used to mean?
Yeah, I think something important, and it's $1 million question, is remember, end of the day, that this is all on-chain activity, right? So if you're building a project, how can you seamlessly embed it into your product to where the user does not, give a crap about what's actually happening behind the scenes? And I think a lot of people that I speak with as well kind of forget that. They want to force a model that, Solana may have forced them to do 2-3 years ago, where everyone has to have some sort of sense on what's going on behind the scenes. But realistically, right, I want to game without knowing what's going on behind the scenes. I want to participate on Polymarket. I want to, connect to my router without knowing that blockchain is powering it. So end of the day, right, if the token is really important to your project, what's the loop between revenue, between using the token and the demand of the token, right? Not just, there's a difference between usage and demand. So I think, any new project creator who can solve these questions will really, set themselves up for success.
Cool. And then G, I'm going to give you a harder one, because we've been talking about this stuff. Like how does Avalanche as a layer 1 ecosystem need to evolve given kind of these changes? Like, what directions do you think are like from a big ecosystem with a big E? Like, what can people? How is Avalanche as Avalabs and Avalanche kind of like adapting to this new reality, which I think is kind of good for Avalanche because it's all the stuff that the types of builders that Avalanche has kind of been focused on. So similar to. No big coincidence that Fusion was launched here versus somewhere else, but how are you thinking about the ecosystem?
So with Fusion, part of just for a little background, what we set out to do is create something that can only be built on Avalanche using Avalanche's technology. So I think you'll start to see that being leveraged more. And what I mean by that is, you can imagine this analogy I've used before. David, but it's like this solar system with all these different planets floating around. And I think what you'll start to see, and how we're starting to think a bit more as well, is that there are these sort of centers of gravity that they orbit around. So you'll have, whether it's gaming or loyalty or ticketing, you'll start to see these ecosystems start to coalesce, and you'll have L1s as sort of composition layers that tie in payments, identity, ZK stuff. It could be things that cross different verticals internally, but you'll start to see that these ecosystems start to coalesce around each other and start to interact. Again, shameless plug, but one thing that makes Avalanche different is not just that it's this ecosystem of layer ones, but that these layer ones can speak to each other, including the C chain, which is our sort of liquidity hub. So you can have ecosystems that operate autonomously and sovereignly, but also connect with each other seamlessly and instantaneously. So, whether it be gaming or ticketing or banking, you'll start to see these sovereign entities sort of plugging into each other and creating value that they can add and contribute to one another. So one of the words we use for Fusion is thematic, and so you'll start to see these thematic ecosystems. Internally, we're organized by vertical. We have a DeFi lead, a gaming lead, an enterprise lead, et cetera. I think you'll start to see sort of a parallel with that on chain, where we have L1s that are composing activity across the ecosystem and bringing it together to create, as another thing David says, real business outcomes and real value to users. So again, I'd say TLDR, thematic organization of thematic ecosystems organized by what they compose.
Yeah. So Brian, kind of same question. Like, how will ecosystems, including Avalanche, look similar or different to how they have in the past? Or what is the, how do you make blockchain ecosystems 1 + 1 = 3, I guess is the question, right? Like the promise is there's native, historically it's been there's native composability. Now that's kind of like a feature, right? You can, cross-chain messaging is enabled, all sorts of cross-chain activity. What's gonna get to kind of especially given Avalanche's focus on kind of real companies building real businesses on chain, how do network effects, what are pathways to network effects at kind of the base layer?
Yeah, I would say, the way I look at it is we're a big ecosystem. The ICM advent and a lot of the cross-chain stuff or cross L1 stuff is still very new, right? And I think that's only going to expand more deeply, right? And so I think you're going to see a lot more, especially on the financial side, kind of pools of different types of marketplace layers and different, kind of I would say financial, conglomerates, not the right word, but it's financial hub and spokes where you're going to be able to tap into a lot of different things. And so that's where I think, especially to my point earlier, it's on the ability to kind of create a lot of these new ideas. It's hey, you're going to be able to tap into a lot of these different kind of pools, of liquidity, of capital, of different product ideas much more quickly than before. And so I think that's going to also help ramp up what's actually going to be, brought to market as well. So I think, when you talk about how do we make sure that 1 + 1 = 3, it's one, having it available, two, making sure that people know, hey, this is what it means for you as a business builder and how to interact with it. And then showing over time, this is what it's allowed you to build. And so ultimately, I still think we're in inning 1 or 2 of a lot of this starting to come together. I think there's 70 plus or maybe 80 L1s at the moment. And every time there's a new one that gets added, that's a new, piece of connectivity, right? And so once you get to 100, once you get to 200, once you get to 500, each of those stages are going to look completely different, which is really exciting. And there's going to be, increased value to be building within the network every single time, there's a new L1 that gets added, right? Because that new L1 then leads to more optionality, more differentiation, and new and different ideas that you can plug into. So I think it's frankly just a matter of time.
Cool. And Scott, I'm going to ask you this from a slightly different perspective. I know Space and Time has been focusing a lot now on financial services organization and large enterprises. To what extent, do you think that like the Web3 tech stack generally, space and time specifically, can like generate substantial value? And is this gonna is there gonna be a big enterprise adoption movement this year? Kind of like how are you seeing the market?
Yeah, it's almost shocking how open banks in America and large financial institutions are to building on chain, and it's in ways I didn't expect. Like they're writing smart contracts to create money markets, to create tokenized real estate, to do tokenized CLOs, collateralized loan obligations, and where we see is like these digital innovation offices within banks that are saying, hey, we have this very antiquated traditional process. For example, using CLOs or CDOs as an example. Hey, we have this like monthly roll-up process where we run a bunch of analytics and we calculate the prices of our collateralized loan positions, and then we package that up and we sell it to a traditional market. They're already seeing an opportunity to bring 24/7 price discovery, to access wider liquidity and more buyers on chain, and most importantly have programmable finance. And they're looking, hey, how do we take these traditional processes like a monthly roll up to price our loans, and instead make that a real-time 24/7 discoverable market on chain with a lot more liquidity and programmability in smart contracts. And they're actually doing that in Q1 as we speak. And what that requires is a lot of data, right? So they're also coming to space and time and other data providers to say, okay, how do we connect? How do we allow our smart contracts to ask questions about these securities positions? And how do we add some? How do we gate access to institutional investors with a little more data, a little more discovery on the wallets that are actually creating these assets? Now, with more clarity for the U.S., like from our own government, around who can do what on chain, with the Genius Act,
you're breaking up a bit. This is all good stuff, but you're breaking up a bit.
But you get the idea.
Yeah, I get the idea. You're breaking up a bit, so yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that this year I'm gonna use my moderator privilege here to rant for the last couple minutes of this call. But I mean, I think that this year for me feels qualitatively different. I mean, crazy Porter, we've been in this space for 8 years now, which I guess some people say, oh, you're an OG. It doesn't feel like it because of how fast everything evolves. But I think that this year to me feels, I think, qualitatively different in terms of a couple of things. Like number one is like the industry is here to stay. I think that like the Genius Act from a regulatory perspective and the Clarity Act, if people have been following that, like looks like that will pass maybe this quarter. You never know on such things, but there's regulatory predictability. So I think that that's one. I think that kind of like an extension of that, what's happened this year is that people see that kind of like blockchain rails are just better for some stuff. Like it's undeniable, and even incumbents have to recognize it, because things like stable coins and on-chain payments, I mean, this provides an existential threat to some people's businesses and a big opportunity for other people's businesses. So I think that's kind of like number two. I think number three is that token models, I don't think people still understand how they work after, tokens have been a thing since, I don't know when people say that they became a thing, but let's just assume it's been the last 10 years. Like I still feel like people don't know how to use tokens and design tokens that help get to their business objective. There's, quite frankly, I think that the Kite team did a really good job on this in terms of trying to put more innovative measures in place, but there's a real lack of imagination here in terms of what tokens could be used for, how they're best used. I think that, Hyperliquid for me has been super interesting, and Brian used the term like there's going to be just assets that people can, basically build upon and leverage on chain. G said something similar. Like Hyperliquid has, a revenue producing business, which effectively provides an underlying unit of account. And in this case, it's people trading perps. And then based upon their ability to organize large amounts of transaction volume on this one thing, perps trading, people are then willing to build markets on top of Hyperliquid because they can make money doing so, right? And that has positive impacts for the Hyperliquid business, for the Hyperliquid token. So if we think about like from an open ecosystem perspective, kind of like units of account. So in the case of Kite, it could be access to lots of agentic capabilities. Then people might, they would like to use the capabilities, they'd like to pay to use the capabilities, or like to be able to pay to build things that allow others to use the capabilities. So I think that like having a tech stack and a product people really want to use is going to be important for token models. And then I think that another qualitative difference this year is that there are some companies with revenue kind of that are Web3 native, if you look like Pump.Fun or Hyperliquid. But I think you're going to see companies that have revenue that's off-chain and coming on-chain to take advantage from, like, number one, like blockchain rails for efficiency purposes or monetization. If you can, if you're a company that provides services to large telcos around user engagement, you probably have lots of dollars flowing to the system. You can either let someone else collect that interest on that, or you can issue your own stable coin, which is very, very easy. So I think you're going to see companies with revenue thinking through why tokens are kind of a more dynamic form of equity and how they can be used in a better type of way. And I think it's this kind of like combination of better token models that are kind of designed to be integrated with real businesses and the structural realities and the revenue dynamics associated with real businesses, that, you kind of finally have a reason why a business would want to just operate with on-chain primitives, which are, as I said, very widely available because you can do stablecoins as a service. There's lots of as a service offerings that you can use to get to market way faster to do things that you want this year that just simply didn't exist at any level of maturity in previous years. So I think that it's going to shape up to be a very exciting year. I think that, if I'm sitting there, someone who's part of a project or tracking a project or thinking about making an investment in a token, like I'm asking myself a lot more fundamental questions. I want to understand the business a lot better. And I want to look for, a product, like you can think about a token as the liquid token is, I've got my liquidity event earlier. Instead of going to venture capitalists and asking them to fund my user acquisition, I'm going to have an alternative method of liquidity, and that's going to go help me to do that. So it's just a different way of doing it. So I think that looking for businesses like the ones on here that want to go in fundamentally strong directions, even though it might not be revenue today. That's one class, but you got to be building towards something real and a big outcome. And then the other class is like people with revenue already who are going to, have a sense of how the token fits into the token economy, building a robust business. And I think you'll see things like, token-based projects doing voluntary financial reporting that's public. Like EtherFi is already doing this. It's fantastic. When I first heard about, was on the first call, I didn't really know what to think about it, because when Scott, when he was running it for Space and Time, raising his first round, we said, don't even mention the word revenue, because investors used to actively not like it. So I think that what we're building with Fusion here, and you can see there's lots of awesome people involved, and there's others who couldn't make it, who also say what's up. Like, there are people who are collaborating and getting together and building ecosystems around kind of like, I think, the maturation of our industry. And I think it's a very exciting time to build, to be involved, to join communities. So we will have our Fusion kind of get-togethers every couple of weeks. Next one should be really good as well. We'll send out more details, but I'm excited for us to see what second year brings, and working with everybody on this on the horn here to kind of like develop a new paradigm. So thank you everybody for listening. Thank you everybody for joining. I think Chaz has to make a giveaway here, but appreciate everyone's participation.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you, David. And as you say, yes, just to announce the winners of our $50 giveaway. That's a lot of text down there, but we have Rene, Abhishek, and Juan. So their names are there in the post below. So please, if you're one of those people, get in touch with us. You can either reply to one of our posts on X or DM us at AVAX Fusion. Congratulations, you've got 48 hours. We will not be announcing winners on X, so you need to watch the live stream, and there's a lot of quality content to watch as well. So you win both ways. So thank you everybody who entered. And I'll pass back over to you, David, to close out.
Close it out. Just thank everybody again. Going to be an awesome year. Appreciate everybody on this call. Lots of great humans doing some excellent things. And see you in a couple. To all the folks who are listening in. See you in the next couple weeks.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody.